there's really two ways that you can build a graph. One, the way I prefer actually is using the legacy dialogues, but you can also do the chart builder, and I can kind of show you how that works either way. On the chart builder, you click here, and whichever graph, I actually have a box plot pulled up here, so you just choose whichever graph you want to use. You want to switch that to a bar chart, and then you just pull that up into the window, and you can put, let me go back to my box plot here since I had a good one all set up here. So you can put your box plot in there, and then put your variables. So the Y, so I have a continuous variable here, systolic blood pressure, and I'm going to do a categorical variable here, region of the country, and looks like I have everything I need. If you want to add titles and footnotes, you can do that right here. There's some other basic elements. Okay, so a lot of functionality here, a lot of choices. Okay, so that's the good and the bad of the chart builder. But you click here, and here we have a box plot. So I'll go back and do these through the legacy dialogues here in a moment and put a little bit more detail to this. But that's how you use the chart builder. And you can use the chart builder really with all of these types of graphs. Let me show you with the legacy dialogues how you would do the same thing. You just click legacy dialogues, and then you select here. So you have different options. And the reason it's called legacy is this is coming from earlier versions of SPSS. Okay. Most of the time you're going to be using a simple chart. And here, so if we just have a simple bar chart, then you're going to want to have a categorical variable selected in the category axis. And here now we're just creating charts. We're not worrying about the titles, but certainly you'll want to put in, the title, a subtitle. You can even put in footnotes and whatever. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Okay, so here we have our bar chart. Okay, so now that's just literally the counts. I'm going to go back here for a moment. Let's go back to the same bar chart. Still pulled up here, and you can see how it's it's the number of cases. What if we wanted to use another statistic? You're going to need a variable. Let's say we wanted to have the mean. And so you can select here, you can do the mean, you can do the standard deviation, all kinds of options here. And click OK. And now instead of the counts, we have the means in all of these different categories. Finally, one last thing on the bar chart is if you wanted these broken down by each of the, let's say we wanted to have these broken down by, let's do gender. Won't be quite as busy. And now we've broken down, so we have male and female. You can create it. Instead of rows, if we want it in columns. Click here, now we have our males and females broken out here. So a lot of functionality, even in the legacy dialogues, gives you a lot of options for making this look exactly like you want it to look. Let's move on to another graph. We'll stay with the legacies here. We're going to go to a pie chart. Pie chart is very simple. As I showed in the bar chart, you can use this primarily for a categorical variable. You can add a continuous, on the y-axis. A pie chart is really just strictly for categorical variables. So it can be very simple. So based on the variable that you've chosen. Okay, and you can do the same thing. You can break them down if you need to. You can make these as complicated as you want. It's a little crazy here with all of these different pies listed here, but that's how you can create a pie for each of your different categories. Next one, the box plot. I mentioned that earlier. We did a demonstration of the box plot using the chart builder. In the legacy, you just pick a simple. And here, so a box plot, this is a little bit more complicated. So you have to have a categorical variable in the category axis, and you'll see that the nominal variables, look like with the little bubbles there, and you must have a continuous variable in this one that looks like a ruler. Okay, so here. And this is exactly what we showed earlier. What are we seeing in a box plot? So within each of the boxes, you see that there's a center line in the middle. The center line is the median. Okay. The upper and lower edges of the box are the 25th and 75th percentile of the box. And then, of course, sometimes it's called a box and whiskers. And so what the whiskers show, frankly, are all of the outliers. I have a pretty large data set here, so there's a lot of outliers, especially on the high end. And what do these numbers mean? So when it says 2040, that isn't the blood pressure, that's the row in your data set that you're going to find that outlier. Okay, so that's what those numbers are doing for you here. The next graph I want to show you is a scatter dot. And so we'll just do a simple scatter dot here. What you're going to do with the scatter dot is you're going to have primarily two continuous variables. That's the best way to do a scatter plot. So we have, let's put in, let's see how the baseline systolic compares to the baseline diastolic. And here's our scatter plot. And if you're doing this as a regression, so let's take a look back to even at the box plot for a moment. The box plot is really a visual representation of what you would see in an analysis of variance test. So what you're doing is you're looking horizontally across, and you're looking at how these boxes line up. Okay, so if one of the boxes was visually, quite a bit higher than another box, where frankly there's like very little overlap, then that would probably give you a clue that there's probably a significant difference, at least between those two boxes, and you would have then probably a significant ANOVA. If all of the boxes, if these boxes look pretty close, this one might be a little bit on the high side. When you're looking at a scatter plot, what you're looking at is a visual representation of a regression line. So what you would do visually is, if you can imagine drawing a line through the midpoint of the scatter, that would roughly equate to what you would get in a regression equation. So a lot of times you'll do both, and you'll see how the scatter plot relates to your regression line. And what it does is it gives you kind of a visual window into the variability. Okay, so some of these, the more it looks like a line, the stronger the correlation. The more it looks like a big donut or a big tire, the more it's going to look, the weaker the correlation is going to be. All right, we're going to do one more for you. and that is the histogram. So the histogram is also designed for a continuous variable, and it's really designed for one variable. So I have age loaded up here in my variable. I have the display normal curve checked, and I click OK. And here's my histogram. And a histogram is really designed to help you visualize whether you're looking at a normal distribution or not. And they even have the normal curve here, so you can see how well your histogram looks with the normal curve. If it doesn't look like that, then it's less likely that it's that it has a normal distribution. Okay, that is graphs and charts in 15 minutes or less. Another thing I do want to mention before I go back to the Q&A is how to format these graphs, because it can be quite difficult. It's difficult enough with a table in SPSS to format it, but what the heck do you do with these graphs? It can be very, very tricky and very difficult. A lot of times what you have to do, there you go. I was testing my surface there, Nancy. So what you have to do really is you kind of have to double click on it and go into this chart editor. Okay. Once you're in the chart editor, you do have some options here, and some of these are visually shown to you. If you want to change the color, for example. Okay, that kind of made it ugly, but that's okay. We're okay with that. Try a different color there so you can see the line still a little bit. And you can see here, quite honestly, you just kind of have to play with some of these. If you want to see the data labels, in a histogram that can get a little bit annoying. If you're in a bar chart, it might make a little bit more sense. You'll also get a dialog box. So again, you can put this, do quite a bit with the chart editor to make it look like you wanted it to look. It's kind of important that since we're all Walden students and we use APA formatting, to be able to get your chart as close as possible to an APA formatted figure. And what does that look like? Of course, all of you have your APA style manual, I'm sure, close at hand. If not, there's actually a very good resource, and I've just kind of committed this site to memory, but if you go to the academicguides.waldenu.edu and select the Writing Center, there's actually an entire tab on APA style. And within APA style, there is a tab on tables and figures. And when you get to the tables and figures tab, you can actually click right on figures. And so what you're seeing here on the screen is an example of a properly formatted, this is a figure. You can also see what tables are supposed to look like. I highly recommend you get comfortable, even if you're doing your coursework, because ultimately you're going to get to a point where you're doing a dissertation or a capstone, and you're going to be confronted with, how the heck do I get this figure into APA formatting? Okay, going back here to our charts. So let's go back and do one more, just real quick, real basic one here. So when you're creating these, you may want to also get in the habit then of putting your title in. So, put table 1 in line 1, and then the name of the figure in line 2, and so forth, so that you can get those in and formatted correctly.